What's up, mortgage coach community? Dave Savage coming to you live. I am broadcasting out of not quite Bend, Oregon. I'm a little outside of Bend, outside of Sun River, in a place called Caldera Springs, celebrating the holiday with my family. And I've got two amazing mortgage leaders on today's call. As my co-host and co-interviewer, we've got Todd Ballenger, Mr. Mortgage. What's up, Todd?
Hey, man. Thanks for
actually, I should have called you Mr. Advice, Mr. Certified Liability Advisor. And then we have who we believe is one of the best mortgage advisors in America, Tom Sherman. While he is not coming to you live out of Dallas, he's actually in Breckenridge, Colorado at the moment. Probably getting ready to celebrate Thanksgiving with your family. Is that right, Tom?
Absolutely. We got family showing up tomorrow.
Well, congratulations. What a blessed life, and how beautiful that Colorado sky is.
Yes, beautiful.
Oh man. So Tom, as I said when we laid this up, it's, we're going to talk about turning mortgage advice into a competitive advantage. We hope people get some takeaways from this, and we hope they get some inspiration from it. Let's just start. If you could just share with everybody a little bit about your mortgage practice and a little bit about the volume your team and your branch does.
Yeah. So been in the business a long time, going on 25 plus years. Hard to believe that. A lot of things have happened in that period of time. But to have a mortgage branch, Benchmark Mortgage in Dallas, Texas, and our team has about 15 to 16 people on it. Originators, processors, sales support staff, that kind of stuff. And we originate as a branch about 250 million a year in production. And then personally, I've got a team within that branch that will do about 200 million a year. A little bit less, but pretty close.
Yeah, well, 200 million is incredibly impressive. And how many families is that about on average per year that you're serving?
Yeah, we're right now at about 500 so far this year, and we'll end up pretty close to 575, 600.
That's incredible. And I think that dispels one myth, is that a lot of loan officers think that, hey, to give advice and to be an advisor, you can't do a lot of volume. And I've interviewed a lot of folks to dispel that myth. But if you could just share a little light on that, because you've probably heard that before from loan officers where they're like, how do you have time to deliver advice? And how do you respond to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would tell you that 10, 15 years ago, I'd have probably asked the exact same question. And that's because I was spending my time trying to do everything in the process. And what I realized is if you're going to be a financial advisor for your clients, you've got to give them financial advice. Taking a great application, gathering documentation, all the other stuff that goes along in the process is important, but that comes after you give good advice. And so what we've done on our team is that I'm very much the front end side of the process. I'll spend the first 45 minutes to an hour with a client and take them through the initial application that will come after the advice. But then after that, it'll actually go into the loan process with the assistants and with the processors. I won't come back into the transaction until at closing, if not afterwards.
Sorry about that, guys. I didn't realize I had my mute button on. So you are the coach and advisor, and when it comes to a lot of the transactional details, that is what you're putting your team around. And I find that to be a pretty central theme with top advisors. Todd, I'm going to give you the next question, but before you get that next question, if you could just speak to how important do you think it is to be an advisor for a mortgage professional this decade? Like, last decade, I think you could get away with being a loan officer and doing transactions. But I think as we come to this new era of the digital mortgage, more and more of the loan itself it's becoming pretty commoditized. I mean, a lot of the work can be done by the consumer filling out their app, and a mortgage transaction, can be a matter of days, and the machine can do a lot of that. So how important do you think it is to be a mortgage advisor?
Is that for me or is that Todd?
That's for you.
Oh, great. I think being a mortgage advisor is paramount. If you're not going to do that, then I strongly suggest going to work for a company that'll give you leads, fill out good applications and move on. I think as the industry has become more commoditized, and you hit it, since 2008, we've seen a general and a very rapid descent or ascent towards a digital mortgage and just more of a commodity. And if you're not going to separate yourself by advice and guidance, the only way you're going to separate yourself is going to be price. So unless you're willing to really just start, leading with price, you're going to have something. And I believe that is providing true advice, coaching, and consulting for the largest financial decision most people will ever make in their life.
I'll follow on then with the why question, and we get this a lot. That is how do you start a process? Because if you've never done this before, you're like, hey, the lending business is tough. How do I become as you said, a financial advisor? But what you're really trying to do is understand something about the consumer, but you develop a process. I mean, how have you gone about differentiating yourself in that way? And so what are some of the steps that you take specifically to do that with a client?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I think a lot of people want to give advice. They just don't have advice to give.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I can't tell you how many loan officers I run into that say, oh yeah, I coach and consult my clients. And what they really mean is I tell them the difference between a 30 and a 15-year loan. And so for years, I've made it my goal to become an expert in all things financial, whether that's, becoming a certified liability advisor, where I can actually guide them through managing their liabilities, whether that's becoming an expert in, the total cost analysis with Mortgage Coach, whether that's just simply getting up every day and spending 30, 45 minutes reading about what's going on in the worldwide markets, so that you're giving advice and information that's not just, pulling something out of the air. You're actually giving value to the client, and the clients notice that, and you're really making a financial impact in their life that could arguably change their life going into the future, which is my ultimate goal. I want to help them reach financial freedom. And I can't do that just by giving them a little bit of information on loan products.
So I think most loan officers, when they think of education, advice, and consulting, and you really listen to the conversation, it's like they're giving them education, advice, and consulting on getting a mortgage, your credit, your debt to income ratios, your down payment. I mean, that's transactional education. And what you're talking about is financial literacy. And I'm going from memory, but I believe when I interviewed you last time, your whole goal was getting the consumer to think about their mortgage differently. Like, you were not happy until they're like, wow, I never thought of that before, or no one ever told me that before. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's great. One thing I've been employing a lot in my conversations here recently is when someone says, hey, what kind of interest rate are you offering? I will say, well, let me ask you a different question. At what interest rate would you like to invest your down payment at? And so I actually will flip the conversation from what are you paying on your debt to what are you investing your down payment at? And the minute that happens, suddenly they start realizing that any money that they're putting into their home is debt equity. You're investing that at whatever the interest is that you're paying on the remaining amount of the debt. Ironically, nobody calls their financial advisor and says, hey, man, I need you to guarantee that you're going to get me a rate of return of 2.5% on my money. Nobody says that, right? They want the highest rate of return they can. And so when I ask that question, what ends up happening is it forces them to think differently about how they're managing their liabilities. And then we're able to get them into a whole different conversation that is very different than, hey, let me tell you about a 30-year mortgage or a 15, et cetera. That'll come into it, but it goes in a different direction.
Do you have like a recent example of someone where maybe like, you're competing, on the battlefield, and you're using that advice to differentiate yourself with a consumer?
Oh yeah, I've got a client right now that was buying or is buying a new home with a builder, and the client was really talking about putting all their proceeds from the sale of their current home into their new home. Okay, so it was about $1 million house, and they were putting about $600,000 down into their new mortgage. Now they haven't made their final decision on what they're going to do yet. But what I did is I put together a total cost analysis that I can show you here in just a minute if you'd be interested. But I ran the difference between doing a 20% down plus doing, the full 600 down roughly. And then I looked at a 30-year and a 15-year. And my whole goal was helping them understand if their goal is to get to financial freedom, and in their mind, that financial freedom is their house paid for. If their goal is to get to financial freedom, how can we help them get there sooner and more efficiently? So I do think it's important also as we're talking about financial advice. And I heard this last week and I thought it was great. Most of us want to deliver and exceed our clients' expectations. We just don't know what our clients' expectations are. And so a lot of times we say, well, we want to coach and consult our clients and we want to help them through this process. But if we don't understand what their ultimate goal is, what they ultimately want to achieve, we very possibly could be giving them good economic information, but it may be the wrong information for what they want to achieve. And in this particular case, the client's goal is, I want to have my house paid for by the time I retire. That was it. So everything else was secondary. And so we used the total cost analysis to show them how they could get their house paid for more quickly by putting less money into their home and investing the difference.
I want to reflect something back you said there. That's really important, because we have this conversation and law officers think that, again, being a liability advisor means I have to tell people what to do. And what you said there that was so powerful is you're asking someone what they want to do and you're showing them how to get there faster. You're not redirecting them and saying, hey, no, I'm going to implant my ideas into your head and this is what you want to do. You're saying, what do you want to do? And that's half the battle. When someone says, I want the lowest interest rate, you're not willing to ask them why. Like, what would you want the lowest rate for? Well, because I want the lowest payment. What would the lowest payment make possible for you? Well, I'd be able to save more for college funding. Okay, so really college funding is important to you, right? Or in your example there, if someone says, I want to have my house paid off in retirement. Okay, why do you want the house paid off in retirement? Because I don't want a mortgage payment. Well, having the mortgage paid off is not the issue. It's the payment that's the issue. So if you could have no payment in retirement, would that be the same to you? And is that important, right? So it's not rocket science, but if you ask people their intent and they tell you, you'll find that you're more confident because you know how to help them get there faster. If you think you've got to tell them what to do, it's very tricky, because then you have to almost understand everything and you have to be kind of mystical in your application, and just keep asking questions and you'll be surprised at how simple, being a good advisor can be at a certain level.
Yeah, Todd, I think that's really important, because I think you hit on something that I think is very important. A lot of originators, and I would hate to say most originators, but most originators don't really know what to say. They've got a couple tools in their toolbox that they want to pull out and use for every client. And if you're giving advice and you're giving really good coaching, you've got to lead with a lot of questions. If you're not finding out about what they want, what their objectives are, what their goals are, what their fears are, what their anxiety is, if you're not figuring that out, there's no way that you're going to be able to give them the right advice and direction.
So I hope some folks took some notes on this, but there were two things that I heard, and I want to validate this from you, Tom. But one, you're asking questions to get to financial goals beyond the transaction itself. Like, you're looking for, hey, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, you want to have some clear financial goals. And without that, you cannot be an advisor. And then it's not about telling people what to do. It's about giving them strategies and options. So at the end of the day, if a loan officer is not finding out those financial goals in the long, over time, and they're not giving options and strategies, they're not an advisor. Is that fair to say?
That is very fair to say. Absolutely.
Yeah. And the questions can be, say more about that, Dave. That's all you need. No, I'm saying, no, that's the question. Say more. That's all you need. If someone says, I want to pay off my house, say more about that, Tom. And they say, well, because I want to do this. Say a little more about that. Tony Robbins used to say it takes 2 to 3, say more about that to actually get to the real issue. And if you just say, I want to pay my house off, and you jump in and start, trying to figure out what to do there, you've really missed an opportunity. And you don't have to have 100 good questions. You can have 1 or 2, like say more about that, which is really a question, but it's also kind of an implied command. Well, just say more about that and then let them talk. And then when they're done, say, could you say a little more about that? It doesn't take, just practice it. Just, it's a simple thing. and watch what happens, and watch as they get clearer about their own answer, how you get clear about how you can help them.
So guys, you just heard it from the creator of the Certified Liability Advisor Program. And like probably one of the most important questions you can ask someone is, oh, say a little bit more about that, or why, and not like a teacher, well, why? But like, oh, why? I'm curious. I'd really like to understand that a little bit more. And if you could just get people to, what is a big financial goal? A couple say more about that, or a couple wise statements. Now you are in the position to provide some strategies and options. So guys, some of you are watching this live in our Facebook group. And if you're live in the Facebook group, put questions down below. We will get to them. If you're watching this recorded in our YouTube channel, we'll get to those questions too, or we'll cover them in another interview. I'm doing a whole series of these interviews with Todd Ballenger, where we're interviewing some of America's best mortgage advisors, because Todd and I are on a mission. We think that mortgage professionals can be the single most valuable advisor to a family, more valuable than a CPA, more valuable than an asset manager or a financial advisor, more valuable than life insurance. We think the mortgage and real estate professionals can deliver more value to families than any other advisor. And we're here to train you, teach you. Here at Mortgage Coach, we're here to help you not only learn how to do this, but actually have a tool and a platform to do it. So Tom, we got about another, 5-10 minutes here. Why don't you walk us through a case? Tell us about a family that you've helped. Todd and I will pepper with you with questions around it. If we have time to do two cases, we'll do 2 cases. But walk us through an example of you delivering advice versus price in the marketplace.
Absolutely. So I won't mention the name, but we'll just call him Client A. And Client A had been a past client of mine. And I received a phone call in end of October, I guess it was, and was told that they were on track to close their dream home in December. They had already spoken with the lender that the realtor had referred them to. So that was referral number 1. And then referral number 2 was the builder's mortgage company who is offering incentives. And so we were going into this with two competitors. And my advantage was I had a relationship. So our advice in the past had at least generated a phone call back to us, which was good. And so the client was selling a current home, or is selling a current home, will have about $500,000 to $600,000 in cash, and is buying a new house, which is their dream home. And their goal is to have the house paid for by the time they retire, which is roughly 10 to 12 years. So that kind of sets the picture. So the first thing I did was start asking questions. I knew that if I jumped right into, hey, I can get you a loan, I was really just competing at the same level of the builder's mortgage company and the realtor's mortgage company, which I knew would then go to, what's your rate and what are your fees? So I had one choice. I could either immediately start competing on price, or I could start with the advice and the coaching consulting. So I started asking a lot of questions, and those questions started out with, what are you hoping to achieve with this purchase? Why do you want to do that? And what are your long-term financial goals? And then, like Todd was just saying, I always use the question, tell me more. So when they answer a question, tell me more. So, what do you want to achieve? Well, I want to pay my house off. Well, tell me more. Well, it's always been a dream of mine. Well, tell me more. Well, my mom and dad, they never paid their house off and it caused them financial stress the rest of their life. Okay, well, tell me more. And you just keep getting more and more information. And literally by the second, usually the first tell me more, what I've discovered is that the client has already given more information to you than they've given to your competitor. So you've automatically started separating yourself from the pack just by those simple questions. And so that's what I started doing with this clients. Tell me more. What are you looking to achieve? And I actually started with this, this is a bold takeaway, but I actually started with this. I said, Warren, if your goal is just the cheapest price on this deal, I think you should stay with the builder's mortgage company. So that's a big takeaway close is, hey, thank you for calling me, but if your goal is price, I'm not your guy. Well, that actually precipitated a response from him, which was basically his "tell me more," right? Excuse me, you tell me more. And so we started this whole process about managing his liabilities and managing his investments, looked at his long-term retirement plans, et cetera. And I'm gonna share my TCA with you if that's all right. Can I do that real quick?
Yeah, go ahead, share it
Okay.
online. And by the way, guys, did you hear the rhythm on that? I mean, the questions, what are you trying to achieve? Tell me more. And once he felt like he knew enough to deliver some strategies, here goes.
Yep. And so now this is very simple. And since you guys got me bringing this right up, Dave, here today, I use TCA as a very interactive coaching tool. So I don't know if everybody knows that on this call, but you can use the total cost analysis as an interactive tool. And what I mean by that is I can have the client looking at the tool while I'm going through and making changes on the tool, which is incredibly powerful. So in this particular case, you can see the headlines. I ran a 30-year with 20% down. I ran a first and a second, assuming that at some point they'd want to pay off that second lien. I then ran a conventional loan, conforming loan, where they put all the money down to get to their conforming limit. And then I just threw in a 15-year conforming as well. And without going into all the details, my whole goal is to tell the client that there's more to this process than just getting a mortgage loan. And so when you do that, when you give that information, they start asking questions. We go through the whole thing, and I probably don't have time to go through it all today. But what I did is I ran the 30-year with 20% down. And then I looked at the savings that they would have had by doing a 15-year or 30-year with all the way down to a conforming loan limit. Then I looked at investing the difference up front versus investing difference every month. And then you look at what can happen when you take a large sum of money up front and you invest that money up front at a 5 or 6% rate of return versus a smaller amount of money every month at that same 5 or 6% rate of return. And obviously they're going to have more cash at the end of the deal if they have a larger amount of money to invest up front than if they invest it monthly. So I know we're hitting on a lot of different topics there, and I'm happy to go through that in more detail.
We'll scroll down a little bit because I want to, see in the bottom right-hand corner, you notice there, everyone, actually you have a video, a 52-second video. Why don't you close that video? Just hit that little X right there, or move the video. Okay, there we go. So we're seeing the net worth over 10 years. Now, what did this person end up doing? Or do you know which one they ended up doing?
Yep. So ironically, and this is really, really powerful for us, because at the end of the day, this client did not choose what I would have recommended. This client chose what made them more comfortable. They were just able to make that decision with all the information. So in this particular case, he took the information back to his wife. We got on a conference call with he and his wife. And his wife said, "My only goal is paying off the house." And this is kind of funny, but the brother-in-law is their financial advisor. And she was a little concerned that the rate of return that the brother-in-law could get would be verifiable and necessarily accurate. I won't say his word, but could we really guarantee that they would get that kind of rate? And so at the end of the day, they chose to put all of the money into the house, get a conforming loan, and go on a 15-year mortgage. And it just was 100% for peace of mind.
Yeah, well, and again, it's options, and that's where it's advice. And now you're not competing on rates and fees; you're competing on what you said, coaching and consulting. By the way, I don't think I've ever heard the exact term you use, interactive teaching tool, the TCA. So I like those words together, and I love the way you're making it run. Todd Ballenger.
Let me tell you what I did on this one, just so you can it makes more sense. But I told the client, I said, for this TCA to really make sense, you have to guarantee me that your monthly payment off your mortgage, by you putting all this extra money into it, you've got to guarantee me that extra $1,000 you're actually going to save. Because if you don't save that extra money, everything we're talking about is invalid, which is a big deal. People are much more likely to save money if there's a large chunk that they're starting with then if they're having to put a little bit of money away every month, that's easy to spend, right? We want to go on a trip, or I want to buy a new purse or whatever, that's easy to spend. And so I can go into the interactive tool and I can say, okay, instead of saving $1,000 a month, let's say you skip every other month and you only save $6,000 over 12 months. And all of a sudden we're watching their net worth, and their net worth just plummets. And you're then able to say, okay, now this is again why I recommend borrowing a little bit more money and investing that money that would have been down payment, invest that into some sort of investment tool. And ironically, this client at the end of the deal actually came back and said, I know I'm making the wrong financial decision, but it's what we feel we want to do. Powerful
Love it.
statement.
Yeah, especially guys, when you're competing with a builder's lender. I mean, let's face it, competing with a builder's lender is really hard to compete on price, whether there's financial incentives that they're providing. You go ahead and stop sharing your screen. Todd Ballenger, any questions or thoughts on this?
Yeah, so many. So one thing that I've just, as you narrated that, in many ways, we're in the peace of mind business. The question is the peace of mind now? You want the peace of mind now, or do you want it later, right? Because they made a peace of mind now decision, right?
Absolutely.
Now, if someone found out that they paid $500,000 more for their house than they needed to because they made a mistake in their borrowing, then peace of mind may be more important to them down the road, right? Because I don't want to end up knowing 10, 20 years from now that I paid $500,000, $600,000 more for my house than I needed to. But you got to figure out, where's that peace of mind really at for them? If it's really important that it's right now, then there's a strategy for that. But it's not like one is safe and the other is risky. I mean, again, it's math, it's time, it's compounding. I mean, these are mathematical kinds of things. The other thing that you said, which I really love, is if it's all about price, this is an old Zig Ziglar thing that we used to use very effectively. If it's about price, I want you to go with the competitor. If it's about cost, I think you probably should go with me. And here's why. Right. So you're setting up that there's two things here, right? Like the interest rate might be a little lower here. That's a better price. But this advice that I'm about to provide you and the strategy that we're going to provide is going to cost you dramatically less over time, not just in money, but peace of mind, liquidity, other considerations and stuff. So sometimes when you give people that sort of, again, you're just giving them a framework to think about a little differently here. It's the same as other people. I'm all about peace of mind. You want it now, you want it later. I'm all about price, but you want the lowest price, you want the lowest cost over time. Can be a way to help people sort of, again, get out of their own way. And the questions you were asking are brilliant, because I think it's Dan Kinnaman in Thinking Fast and Slow. He says that the more questions you ask, the more the cognitive bias to the person that's buying is that you know more about them than the other person. And as you know more about them than someone else, you're better equipped to solve their problem, right? So if there's just a heck of a good reason to ask questions, it's because the more you ask someone, the more they think, man, this person really knows a lot about me. This other guy or gal doesn't know that much about me. How are they going to solve the problem that this guy can solve because he knows a lot about me? So keep asking those questions and know that you're creating a bias for them to want to work with you. And hopefully you'll do a heck of a lot better job than the other person would anyway.
Absolutely.
Hey, Tom, so we got a question in here about becoming a certified liability advisor. Obviously, I could ask Todd, hey, what does that mean? And he'd have a lot to say about it. But what is becoming a certified liability advisor all about to you? And what did you learn from that program?
Yeah, it's great. And I got to have a shout out to Trevor Hammond, because Trevor's the one who really got me to be thinking about this. I think what is fascinating is every single person you talk to will say they want a financial advisor, right? Whether they have one now or whether they have one in the future, they all want a financial advisor. And if you ask questions on what that means to them, that means they want someone who is really advising them in regards to their current assets. What Trevor really got me thinking about, and I think it's something that I knew intrinsically, but he actually got me to put something around it, but was we never manage the other side of the balance sheet, which is the liabilities. We always want to talk about our rate of return on our current investments, but we never really want to talk about what our liabilities are costing us. So he introduced me to certified liability advisors, and that's really what that is. You're helping people manage their liabilities, which, as I've really begun to delve into this in the last several years, the reality is people need more liability advice than they need financial advice. And if you can get their liabilities in check, it's amazing what can happen to their assets.
No doubt. Well, I am a huge fan of the program. We're seeing a lot of mortgage coaches become certified liability advisors, and I think when they go through that training, that program, they just get better at being a mortgage coach. Todd, would you mind telling anyone who wants to get signed up for that? What's the best way to go, and anything you want to share about it?
Yeah, I'll follow on with what Tom said. Investment advice is about what's left over after liabilities. People don't save before they pay their mortgage, so they're coming through you anyway, right? If you can help people save at the top end, there's more left over to invest, and that in of itself is a critical thing to understand. But if you want to learn more, go to barsmartuniversity.com, and you can learn all about the program right there. Jump in, sign up. I promise you won't regret it.
And there is a discount. Oh, go ahead.
I just want to give a shout out. Having done this for a long time and going through BSU, the information that's available in that is I've never seen anything like it. It's well worth it.
Cool. Thank you, Tom.
And guys, you get $500 off as a mortgage coach. So use the discount code MCVIP. We'll put a link down below to that. Hey guys, I really appreciate you taking time today to bring this leadership to the mortgage coach community. Everybody have an incredible Thanksgiving, and thank you, Tom. We really appreciate you, brother.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Tom.
All right, take care, everybody.
Thanks, Dave.